Okay, so, we all hear about, being afraid of spiders, right?
Right.
Or, heights. But have you ever heard of someone being afraid of, like, peanut butter sticking to the roof of their mouth?
Oh, yeah.
Today, we're doing a deep dive on the world of bizarre phobias.
Yeah.
The kind that make you wonder, wait, is that a real thing?
Uh-huh.
Our source is this fascinating article called
Yes.
10 Most Bizarre Phobias
Yeah.
from 10mosttoday.com.
Right.
It's from February 12th, 2022.
Okay.
Um, and it's a list of phobias that are not only unusual,
Mm,
but also reveal a lot about how fear works
right.
and what it can tell us about ourselves.
Exactly.
So get ready for some truly strange phobias.
Okay.
We're going to explore what makes them tick
Hmm.
and maybe even learn a little something about our own hidden anxieties
Yeah, for sure.
along the way. So let's start with a phobia that honestly blows my mind.
Okay.
Optophobia, the fear of opening one's eyes.
Wow.
I mean, we open our eyes constantly. It's
Okay.
such an automatic thing. How can this even be a phobia?
Well, that's what makes it so interesting, right?
Right.
It seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Um, but think about it.
Okay.
Our sight is our primary way of experiencing the world.
Uh-huh.
We rely on it for everything.
Right.
To navigate, to connect, to understand.
Yeah.
What if that sense,
Right.
so crucial to our existence,
Uh-huh.
became a source of terror?
You're right.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like
Yeah.
losing your sight would be like losing your anchor to reality,
Yeah,
leaving you feeling incredibly vulnerable.
for sure.
Maybe that primal fear of losing that connection to the world
Mm-hmm.
is what drives optophobia.
That's a really insightful point.
Yeah.
The article doesn't go into specific
Yeah.
causes for these phobias,
I know.
but your theory definitely aligns with what we know about how deeply our sense of sight
Uh-huh.
is intertwined with our sense of self and our place in the world.
Wow. It really makes you appreciate how much we take our senses for granted.
It does.
Speaking of senses,
Yes.
let's move on to a phobia that might hit a little too close to home
Okay.
for some of us.
Right.
Arachibutyrophobia,
Uh-huh.
the fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth.
Okay, so now, while most of us might find that sticky feeling a bit unpleasant,
Yeah.
imagine that sensation amplified to the point of terror.
Oh, God.
That's the reality for someone with arachibutyrophobia.
I've definitely had my share of awkward peanut butter moments,
Right.
but a full-blown phobia over it?
Yeah.
That's intense.
Uh-huh.
Do we know why peanut butter specifically?
I mean, it likely comes down to texture and sensory sensitivities.
Okay.
Peanut butter has that unique, thick, sticky consistency
Yeah.
that can feel almost suffocating for some people.
Wow.
It might also trigger a feeling of being trapped
Oh,
or a loss of control, especially in someone already prone to anxiety.
that makes sense. It's almost like a claustrophobic reaction triggered by the feeling of the peanut butter
Right.
clinging to your mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it highlights how our individual sensory experiences
Right.
can differ so widely.
Yeah.
What might be a mild annoyance for one person can be a genuine source of fear for another.
It's making me think about all those food textures that people find repulsive.
Sure.
Like I know some people who can't stand the feeling of mushy bananas and others who get the chills from anything slimy.
Yeah.
What about you? Are there any textures that just make you shudder?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But let's not get sidetracked by my food aversions.
Okay, fair enough.
We have a lot more phobias to cover.
Gotcha.
Speaking of which,
Okay.
let's shift gears to a phobia that revolves around something essential to life itself.
Okay.
Heliophobia,
Uh-huh.
the fear of sunlight.
Now this one seems paradoxical.
Right.
Because we need sunlight to survive.
Right.
It's literally the source of life on Earth. So how can something so vital also be a source of terror?
That's the fascinating thing about phobias, right?
Yeah.
They don't always follow a logical path
Right.
with heliophobia.
Mhm.
The fear could stem from a traumatic experience,
Okay.
like a severe sunburn,
Oh, sure.
or it could be related to medical conditions
Uh-huh.
that make someone hypersensitive to sunlight.
Right. But I also wonder if there's a cultural element at play here,
Totally.
especially with all the warnings we hear about skin cancer
Yeah,
and premature aging from sun exposure.
right.
Could those anxieties
I think so.
contribute to heliophobia.
Absolutely. It's highly likely that those cultural messages,
Mhm.
while important for public health,
Uh-huh.
could also amplify existing anxieties
Right.
around sun exposure for someone with heliophobia,
Yeah.
making even moderate sun exposure feel dangerous and terrifying.
Yeah, it's a reminder that our relationship with the sun is both physical and psychological.
For sure.
We need it for our well-being. Yet we're also constantly bombarded with messages about its potential dangers.
Uh-huh.
That creates a complex dynamic
It does.
that can definitely contribute
Yeah.
to fear and anxiety.
Totally. And speaking of anxiety,
Okay.
that leads us perfectly into our next phobia,
Right?
neophobia, the
Yeah.
fear of new things.
We all get a little uncomfortable with change sometimes,
Right.
but neophobia takes it to a whole other level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
As humans, we're wired for progress,
Right.
for exploring the unknown.
Yeah.
Yet for some,
Mm-hmm.
newness triggers a deep-seated fear.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if this fear stems from a need for control, a fear of being overwhelmed by the constant influx
Yeah.
of new information technology and experiences in our modern world.
You've hit on a key element there.
Okay.
The article mentions that neophobia
Hmm.
might be rooted in evolutionary psychology. Think
Okay.
about our ancestors for them.
Hmm.
New and unfamiliar situations often meant potential danger,
Yeah,
an unknown predator,
right,
a change in the environment that threatened their food supply.
right.
A healthy dose of caution toward the unfamiliar was crucial for survival.
Makes perfect sense from an evolutionary perspective.
Right.
But in today's world, the threat of newness is less about physical danger
Uh-huh.
and more about navigating an overwhelming amount of information
Yeah.
and rapid technological advancements.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a fear of being left behind or unable to keep up.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that fear can manifest in different ways.
Mhm.
Some people might avoid trying new foods
Right.
or traveling to new places.
Yeah.
Others might resist new technologies or even shy away from forming new relationships.
Oh, wow.
It all comes down to how that fear of newness manifests in their lives.
This phobia is really making me think about my own relationship with change and novelty.
Yeah.
What about you, listeners?
Mm-hmm.
What new experiences do you find yourselves resisting?
Right.
And what's holding you back from embracing the new?
These are great questions to reflect on.
Yeah.
And speaking of reflections,
Okay.
our next phobia delves into the complex world of family dynamics.
Oh, boy.
Syngensophobia,
Uh-huh.
the fear of relatives?
I'll be honest, family gatherings can be stressful for anyone,
Right.
but a full-blown phobia of relatives,
Yeah.
that takes family drama to a whole new level.
It really does.
What's going on psychologically with this phobia?
Well, syngensophobia really highlights how powerful
Yeah.
and sometimes painful family relationships can be
For sure.
for individuals with this phobia.
Mm-hmm.
There might be past traumas associated with family members,
Oh.
ongoing personality clashes,
Uh-huh.
or even a genetic predisposition to anxiety that gets triggered in family settings.
So it's not just about disliking your aunt's fruitcake
Right.
or your uncle's political rants at Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
It's a deeper fear rooted in the complexities of family dynamics
Yeah.
and the lasting impact those relationships can have on our emotional well-being. It makes you wonder, how much do our families shape who we are,
Right.
for better or for worse?
That's a profound question.
Yeah.
And it's one we can continue to explore as we dive into even more bizarre phobias.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. Yeah, family can be a source of both comfort and anxiety.
Right.
And that brings us to our next phobia,
Okay.
one that revolves around a seemingly simple act, dipnophobia,
Uh-huh.
the fear of dinner conversations.
Hold on, the fear of dinner conversations.
Yeah.
Isn't that something we all dread sometimes?
Absolutely.
Awkward silences,
Right.
controversial topics.
Yeah,
That one relative who always brings up politics.
exactly.
Oh.
But for someone with dipnophobia,
Boy.
those common anxieties are amplified into a full-blown phobia
Right.
that can lead to avoiding social gatherings altogether.
So it's not just about disliking small talk.
Right.
It's a deeper fear that can be really isolating.
Yeah.
What could be driving this kind of phobia?
Well, it's likely a combination of factors, with social anxiety playing a big role.
Okay.
Imagine feeling like you're constantly being judged or scrutinized for every word you say,
Right.
every bite you take.
Yes.
That pressure to perform, to be witty and engaging,
Right.
can be overwhelming for someone with social anxiety.
Almost like stage fight. But
Yeah.
instead of a stage, it's the dinner table.
Right.
And the audience is your family or friends.
Exactly.
No wonder someone with hypnophobia might prefer to eat alone.
Right. The fear can be so intense
Yeah.
that it makes even the most casual dinner conversation
Ah.
feel like a high-stakes performance
Right.
filled with potential for embarrassment or rejection.
And this phobia makes me think about how social norms
Yeah,
around dining can vary across cultures.
absolutely.
In some cultures, meal times are all about lively conversation and debate,
Uh-huh.
while in others, silence and respect are expected.
Right.
I wonder if those cultural differences could play a role in dipnophobia as well.
That's a fascinating point.
Yeah.
It highlights how cultural expectations can definitely shape our experiences
Right.
and potentially contribute to anxieties around social gatherings.
It's a reminder that even something as seemingly universal as sharing a meal
Right.
can be a source of fear and anxiety for some.
And speaking of anxiety,
Okay.
let's talk about a phobia
Right.
that might seem particularly perplexing.
Uh-huh.
A blutophobia.
Yeah.
The fear of washing or bathing.
Now, this one often raises eyebrows
Yeah.
because we tend to associate bathing with cleanliness and good hygiene.
Of course.
But for someone with a blutophobia,
Right.
the act of washing or bathing can trigger intense fear and panic.
It can.
It's hard to imagine being afraid of something that's so essential to our daily routine.
Right.
What could be the root of this fear?
Oh.
Is it the water itself, the
Mhm.
feeling of being wet,
Mm-hmm.
or something else entirely?
The article mentions a few possibilities. Sometimes a blutophobia can stem from a traumatic experience related to water. Okay, like a near drowning incident
Oh, gosh.
or a forceful bath as a child.
Yeah.
It could also be linked to anxieties around contamination,
Going.
a fear of germs or chemicals in the water,
I see.
or it could be a control issue,
Uh-huh.
a fear of losing control in the slippery environment of a bathtub or shower.
Those all sound like very real and valid fears,
They are.
even if they seem unusual to those of us who don't share them.
Right.
It must be incredibly challenging to navigate daily life with a blutophobia.
Absolutely. Imagine the constant struggle
Yeah.
between the need to maintain hygiene
Right.
and the overwhelming fear triggered by washing or bathing.
It's a reminder that phobias can have a significant impact on a person's quality of life.
It can.
This phobia makes me appreciate how much we take our daily routines for granted.
Right.
And it highlights the importance of empathy and understanding for those who experience the world differently than we do.
Well said. And speaking of experiencing the world differently, get ready for this next one because it's truly unique.
Okay.
Geniophobia,
Uh-huh.
the fear of chins.
Wait, the fear of chins.
Yeah.
I've heard of being self-conscious about your chin,
Uh-huh.
but a full-blown phobia.
Right.
What could be so terrifying about a chin?
It's important to remember that phobias
Okay.
don't always have a logical explanation
Mhm.
with geniophobia.
Oh, okay.
It's likely a combination of factors.
All right.
The specific shape or size of a chin
Okay.
might trigger a negative response in someone with this phobia,
Right.
or there might be a past experience or association that's linked to chins in a negative way.
Oh.
So it's not about chins themselves being inherently scary,
Right.
but rather about how our individual perceptions and experiences shape our fears.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that we shouldn't dismiss people's phobias as silly or irrational.
No.
Fear is a very real and powerful emotion, even when its triggers seem unusual to us.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And speaking of powerful emotions,
Okay.
our final phobia for this deep dive is one that really makes you think
Mm.
about the complexity of human experience.
All right, let's hear it.
Philiophobia,
Mm.
the fear of laughter.
Now, this one is truly paradoxical
Yeah.
because we usually associate laughter with joy,
Right.
connection,
Uh-huh.
and even stress relief.
Exactly.
So how can something so positive be a source of fear?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And one that highlights how individual experiences
Right.
can shape our emotional responses in surprising ways.
Yeah.
For someone with geliophobia, laughter
Mm-hmm.
might trigger feelings of anxiety, vulnerability,
Oh, wow.
or even a sense of losing control.
I can see how uncontrolled laughter
Yeah.
might feel overwhelming
Uh-huh.
or even threatening to someone with this phobia.
Right.
It's almost like a fear of being overtaken by emotion,
Mm-hmm.
of losing your composure.
That's a great way to put it. And for someone who has experienced trauma or ridicule associated with laughter,
Right.
it's easy to see how that positive association could become warped
Right.
into something negative and fear-inducing.
Right.
What might be a lighthearted moment for one person
Uh-huh.
could be a trigger for anxiety and panic for another.
It's a powerful reminder that our emotional responses are deeply personal
They are.
and often shaped by a complex web of experiences, memories, and sensitivities.
Yeah.
Just because something is generally considered positive doesn't mean everyone will experience it that way.
Exactly. And with that, we've come to the end of our deep dive into the world of bizarre phobias.
So from the fear of opening one's eyes,
Right.
to the fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth, to the fear of chins, we've explored a range of anxieties
We have.
that highlight just how complex the human experience really is.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest takeaways from our exploration is that fear is a deeply personal and subjective emotion.
Yeah.
What might seem irrational to one person can be a very real and debilitating experience for another.
Absolutely. And it's so important to approach these phobias
Right.
with empathy and understanding,
Yeah.
rather than judgment or dismissal.
Exactly.
Fear is a powerful emotion, and it's not always easy to control or explain.
Remember,
Yeah.
behind every phobia, there's a story. A unique set of experiences, memories, and sensitivities
For sure.
that have shaped that person's relationship with fear.
Absolutely.
Instead of asking, why are you afraid of that?
Right.
Try to understand the underlying story.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what you learn about them and about yourself.
I couldn't agree more. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me,
Yeah.
and I hope it's been the same for our listeners.
Me too.
We've learned that fear can manifest in countless ways,
Right.
from the seemingly mundane to the truly bizarre. But no matter how strange or unusual a phobia might seem, it deserves to be treated with respect and compassion.
Absolutely. And remember, if you're struggling with a phobia, there's help available.
That's important.
Don't be afraid to reach out to a mental health professional who can provide support and guidance.
That's a great reminder. So, listeners, as we wrap up this episode, we encourage you to keep exploring the world with curiosity and empathy.
For sure.
Don't shy away from the unusual or the uncomfortable. Sometimes the most unexpected places can lead to the most profound insight.
Remember, fear is a part of life, but it doesn't have to control us.
Yeah.
With understanding, support,
Yeah.
and a willingness to face our fears,
For sure.
we can overcome even the most daunting anxieties and live fuller, richer lives.
That's a perfect note to end on.
I think so.
Until next time, keep diving deep.